Hey everybody, Matt Johnston, and I'm back. This is the second of two videos where we're talking about the Maryland Family Medical Leave Insurance Plan. In the last video, I talked about sort of the larger issues dealing with what the contributions are going to look like, who's eligible to receive the leave, and for what reasons that leave would be granted. And in this video, we're going to get a little bit more into the weeds and talk about things such as how the leave can be used, um, sort of the administration of the leave, as well as what kind of notices need to be given by the employee and the employer, and some job protection provisions that were inserted in the bill almost literally at the 11th hour. So before I get started, I really would appreciate it if you'd hit the subscribe button that you see down below. If you click the bell, you'll get notices of when we have posted new content. All right, so in the last video, I said that leave will start being eligible, employees will be eligible to start taking leave on January 1, 2025, and the contributions to the insurance fund will be starting on October 1, 2023, and we'll get our first notice of how much those contributions are going to be in June of 2023. So a little more than a year from now. And in between, there's going to be some regulations that are going to be drafted and implemented. And because there's another legislative session in play before we get to the start of this program, there may be some legislative changes that are going to be made potentially next year during the General Assembly session. Okay, so in the last video, I said that an individual, a covered individual, will be eligible to take up to 12 weeks of leave in an application year. So who is a covered individual? A covered individual is somebody who works in Maryland and works at least 680 hours. Okay? All they have to do is work 680 hours in a week, in a year. Okay. So how much is that? Well, a 40-hour work week times 52 weeks is 2,080 hours. So 680 hours is not quite a third, or right about a third of the year. So an employee who works a third of the year, even part-time, would be eligible to take this benefit. They would be able to apply for pay protections and payouts by this insurance fund. Okay, so they can take up to 12 weeks, and that 12 weeks can be spread out. It doesn't have to be 12 consecutive weeks. It could be, let's say you have a surgery, a knee surgery, and you're out for a month following the knee surgery. That's 4 weeks. And let's say you need to have some physical therapy, and you're going to physical therapy 3 times a week for an hour. Okay, and it takes you a while to get to the physical therapy and come back. So you can take leave in up to increments of 4 hours. Okay, so let's say you leave at 1 o'clock, takes you an hour to get to your physical therapist, you do your physical therapist, and you just go home at the end of the day. That could be your 4 hours. And that could happen over the course of multiple months. So the leave does not have to be taken all in one chunk, and it can be taken in increments of up to 4 hours, of at least 4 hours, sorry, not up to, of at least 4 hours. Okay? Now, employees do have some obligation here, and one of that is if they know about it in advance, they should be giving their employer at least 30 days notice. Okay, so this is kind of easy if, for example, you're pregnant. You find out you're pregnant, and you're probably going to have many months in which to give your employer some notice of you needing it. If you're having surgery, that a well-advanced scheduled surgery, you can provide that. Obviously, in an emergency circumstances, you're not going to be able to provide that notice, but you should be doing so as quickly as possible. Okay. There is a requirement when you're dealing with this family medical leave. Okay, so the leave that's taken under this act, under the Maryland Federal Medical Leave Insurance, runs concurrently with federal Family Medical Leave Act, the FMLA Act. So you don't get FMLA benefits and then you get state benefits. It runs at the same time. So if you're a covered employer under the FMLA, so you have 50 or more employees, then this leave under the state program is taken concurrently with the federal program. And the employees must also use whatever banked paid time off that they have. So if you're an employer, and your paid time off benefit for that employee is 2 weeks, then the employee must take all of that paid time off as part of this 12 weeks. Okay, so again, let's go back to you've had surgery, a knee surgery. It's 4 weeks of recovery time, but you have 2 weeks of paid time off available. You have to take that paid time off, okay, and get paid under your paid time off before you can make a claim under the Maryland Family Medical Leave Insurance. So it runs concurrently, okay? And then finally, there's a couple of notice requirements that have to be given to the employee. So employers are required to provide written notice to every employee of their rights under this law. And the notice has to include the right of an eligible employee to receive benefits under the Act, the procedure for filing a claim for the benefits. That procedure will be detailed at some point, probably within the next year or so. The employee's responsibilities regarding notice and failure to provide notice, right of employee to file a complaint, and the right of an eligible employee to job protection, which I'm going to talk about right now in just a second. And this notice has to be given out in a standard form to all employees once a year minimum. So when they start, and then once a year every year. Okay, so there are some employee protections, and these things were added at the very last minute. Here in Maryland, the last day of the legislative session is called sine die, and the legislative session ends at midnight on sine die, and like at 10:30, these employee protections were amended into the bill and then passed. So, an employer cannot deny an employee's restoration of an employee's position, except for cause, and they can't deny it if the denial is reasonable to prevent a substantial or grievous economic injury to the operations of the employer. What that looks like, I got no idea. We'll find out when we get some more information in terms of the regulation. The employer also has to notify the covered individual of its intent to deny restoration of the position. And if the leave has already begun, the employee elects not to return to employment after receiving notice of the employer's intention to deny restoration. So all of those things have to be considered, and that's when you can either terminate somebody for cause or refuse to restore their position. The employee is entitled to restoration of their position, so coming back to that same position or an equivalent position. An equivalent position probably is going to mean not just the same pay, but the same type of responsibilities. So keep that in mind. We're going to have to see how that works and files and works out. And employers also cannot take an adverse action against an employee because the employee has filed for or received benefits under the Act, inquired about the rights and responsibility of the employer under the Act, or communicated an intent to file a claim or complaint or an appeal under the Act. It's a fairly standard anti-retaliation provision. So these things were added in at the last moment, and these are kind of where there's going to be a little bit more wiggle room, and there's going to be a room for a lot of interpretation here. Okay, so I suspect there's going to be lots and lots and lots of questions about the Family Medical Leave Insurance Program. We're still working through a full analysis of the bill, but these are the high points and the highlights. And of course, the implementing regulations will be issued. My guess is the first draft will be issued somewhere towards the end of this year, with final things coming maybe this time next year. And a reminder, to employers that you're going to need to start making plans for this. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what those plans look like in our next video. So stay tuned for video number 3 on the Maryland Family Medical Leave Insurance Program. In the meantime, this is Matt Johnston. Go out and watch some live soccer. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.